Welcome back to 209 Prep Sports Media, your local podcast covering prep sports around the 209. We're going to jump off today, obviously, with the whole COVID issue.
Breaking news that we got today.
Breaking. So Scott and I are fit to be tied. We're just sitting here trying to figure out, rack our brains and try to figure out the best way to approach this. I have, being an employee of a school, I got to be somewhat careful of how I do this and how I don't.
I don't, though.
So you're going to get both sides of the coin. So just so everybody's aware, San Joaquin County and pretty much the whole state has now put everything back under lockdown. No more gyms open, no more restaurants and things like that, which also equates to no more weight rooms open for high school football, high school sports. And it limits us. We're back to basically conditioning for however long you can get kids to stay interested. So
yeah, and I before we really get too deep into this, I want to circle back to something that we said when we first started this podcast. That we're going to do everything within our power to remain neutral. This podcast has nothing to do with politics. We're not taking one side over the other. This is 100% geared towards our youth sports in this area, our high school athletes, and really highlighting them. And so, we may walk a fine line during today's podcast, but rest assured that we do not have a political agenda with this show. We don't have that's not what this is about. But we are going to take a stance today in representation of our athletes because, that's what we're about. And so with that said, as Chris just mentioned, he's got to represent his school, his teams. I was there once myself as a coach, and I can completely understand that. But, this is almost like on that movie Animal House, where you had the scene where the guy's sitting there on the football field and he's got the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. I guess for this scenario, Chris will have the halo and I'll have the horns, and we'll kind of approach it from that perspective. But to say, I don't have, I've got a high school athlete. She's a senior. She's got 1 foot out the door. So I don't have as big of a stake in this as a lot of other people, but I can tell you when I heard that news today, when I was irate. I wanted to just scream. It's so frustrating. I can't even comprehend what our athletes are going through at this point.
Yeah, it's devastating. I mean, I got a text, I don't know, 10 o'clock or so this morning letting me know that, we're now shut down. We've done everything asked of us, from, initially we didn't have any, nothing inside. We started outdoors just like everybody else asked us to. When we actually were permitted to go indoors, we wore masks. We went in pods that limited the amount of kids that we had, in each lifting session. Between sessions, we sanitized all the equipment. We socially distanced when we had meetings. I mean, we're being punished, along with everybody else, and I'm sure everybody else is doing things the right way.
Yeah.
In accordance to a mandate that makes virtually no sense. I mean, these kids they're having issues that are beyond their physical health.
Absolutely. And I don't think that we as a society, and I think maybe we've done a little bit better job, but I don't think that we do a good enough job of recognizing that mental health is equally as important to physical health. It is definitely a component of physical health. And what we've done is that we've basically taken a very, very low risk group of individuals, high school aged athletes, that just from the perspective of the fact that their age falls into a very low risk category, being an athlete reduces it even further. And working out, it's like that saying, movement is medicine. So having these kids work out, having them train and do all this, it's making them healthier. And beyond that, it's giving them the opportunity to keep developing mentally. I read a story recently about an old man that his granddaughter was telling him how great it was that he could order groceries online and do his banking online. And he didn't want to do any of that because the ability to go out and interact with people was part of him remaining healthy. And I don't think that that's any different for high school age kids. I mean, that we've all been teenagers, and when you look back at your teenage years, that was just being a teenager is a battle. It's not the easiest of times. There's so many different things going on, and then we give you I think that's a big reason of having sports. It gives you an outlet. Now we're going to take the lowest risk group, and we're going to take away the outlet, the one main outlet that you have that really gives you a chance to be mentally healthy.
And let me just kind of give you some factual information about our program, and I'm sure it mirrors other programs. So when we started this thing, so it's probably 5 weeks after the initial school season started. Everything was being all distance learning, and we were allowed to do conditioning. So mostly running, drills, cone work, all that type of stuff. And almost immediately I did a grade check, and so that the first practice or two, or that first week or so, we probably had 35, 40 kids show up, say. And out of those 40 kids, I had 15 kids with less than a 1.5 GPA. This is from a program that prides itself on our academics, our academic achievements. We have, as a program last year with nearly 50 something kids, we had a 3.1 GPA.
That's awesome.
So we it's important to us, and it's important that we're prioritizing great academics as well as the physical and mental conditioning. So fast forward, and granted, we went through about 5 weeks of either heat index issues, bad air quality issues, we had COVID issues and things like that. So we were kind of sporadic for the first 5 weeks or so. The last 5 weeks, we've been very consistent. Monday through Thursday, 3 to 5:30 or so, every single day we get the kids in and out. We did a grade check on Monday. I have one student with less than a 2.0 out of the, so you're, to talk about the dynamics and how we flip that, and the reality of it is I still haven't changed my ability to have tutoring or any of those types of things. We don't have that. It's that they're able to go work out, that they're able to lift, that they're able to be around each other, that they have something to look forward to every single day. And you're talking about an age group. Everybody says this is the generation the do nothing generation, the generation of kids that, they're always on their phones or always on, PlayStation or whatever. And you have kids that actually 40 something kids looking forward to lifting weights every day, looking forward to conditioning every single day. I don't fight a kid anymore about showing up. I get kids that, we have our first group of 15 kids that are varsity athletes. They don't even talk during their lift. They just go and they get it done. They just enjoy being there.
Yeah. We've taken away their outlets. And this is where, again, I said, we're not about politics. We're not going to try to get political, but I'm sorry. I think for me, I have to make this statement. If you think this is about a virus at this point, you better rethink, because I think we're beyond that. I think we've gone from where, initially when this virus was first introduced and it showed up in the northwest area of our United States, and it came in like gangbusters. In fact, when it was introduced in Seattle, when people first saw it, came into Seattle. I was actually in Seattle when this thing went down, and couldn't get out of there fast enough. And the strain that came through was very strong. What our doctors tell us, what our scientists tell us, is that strain came through. It was a strain of the flu that was unlike any other that we'd ever seen, and it came in. It was strong. It was highly contagious. It spread like crazy. we locked down, throughout the process of those months, we locked down. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, as I'm sure no one else has. We locked down. It was very surreal what we went through. We did all the things that they told us to do. People are wearing masks, people are social distancing. We locked down. Okay, if it worked then why are we doing it again? Okay, so then the argument is, well, then it didn't work. Well, if it didn't work, then why are we doing it again?
Yeah.
It's like, to me, I think when you look at statistics, like, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but when you look at the effects of poor mental health and statistically what occurs during certain age ranges, it's not good, and we're compounding the problem by taking away everything that some of these kids have. I know in high school, when I was in high school, if we didn't have athletics, I don't know what direction I would have gone academically. I can tell you this, I probably wouldn't have a college degree at this point, but it really was the lifeline that kept me and a lot of my friends in school, and we're taking that away, and we're taking away their social activities of being in school and being a teenager and getting the chance to just be a kid. And shame on our politicians for making this political, because they have at this point. And quite frankly, there's not one politician in the state of California that's been involved in this that I think should ever receive another vote, because I think they're terrible, terrible people. But I will digress.
Well, and part of this, you guys, I mean, for all of us, is that we have to understand, collectively, that the group that's being affected the most by this whole thing right now, initially, I mean, is the group that's underrepresented. They can't be represented because they're not 18 years old. So they really don't have a dog in the fight, and the powers that be, nobody, it amazes me that there's not a coalition, a group of politicians that will get together and fight for the rights of these kids, that will kind of put their careers on the line, per se, because they're going to fight against the norm, but they knowing it's the right thing to do.
Well, we do have an organization that receives income from these high school athletes. We do have an organization. It's called the California Interscholastic Federation, the CIF. They are organized. It's kind of like the collective bargaining group for high school athletics. It's their union, if you will, even though there's really no such thing. So the CIF is the governing body of high school sports. They're there to make good decisions, to organize the sports, to set forth boundaries, rules, policies, and procedures for high school sports. But beyond that, they should also be in a position to advocate for the high school athletes. I truly believe that if you're going to receive income, if you're going to get paid a salary to represent high school athletes, you better damn well do that. And to me, and I'm not going to say every section in the state of California is like this, but I can tell you right now, and I don't care how much flack I get for saying this, but I think the Sac Joaquin section is run very, very poorly. I do not think that the person that runs that organization, I'm not going to say their name because I don't want a lawsuit, but the person that runs the Sac Joaquin section should be out on the street looking for another job, because I think they do such a poor job and they do not advocate for our athletes. I can't express that enough. I've dealt with this person directly on a couple of occasions, and I just do not think that they have our athletes' best interest in mind.
So where do we go from here? I mean, really, so now that's, we can sit on our soapbox and bitch about it and complain and talk about what, how bad it hurts and how much it sucks, because it does. And there's no two ways about it. I mean, I've got texts today from my players. I got texts yesterday that were heartbreaking. Before this ever went down, we were dealing with things that, no high school student should have to deal with. And actually, when you take a job as a coach, you think, oh, I'm going to coach the sport, and really you become more than that. It's bigger than that, and our relationships with our kids are bigger than that. But where do we go from here? What are suggestions that we can have? So initially, right off the bat, I think, protest, right? That's everybody's go-to. I mean, and it happened, we've had that all year long, even during COVID, multiple protests, both sides, all for the last 6-7 months. So that's That's an option. Do we march to the Capitol? And you can't show up in hundreds, you can't show up in thousands. You have to pretty much show up in hundreds of thousands to get somebody's attention. So that's an option. What's another option? Every single high school should get their athletes to write a letter, and we send those all. We flood the Capitol with a bunch of letters. I mean, does it matter? Because they're probably going to get thrown in the, they'll probably be thrown in the incinerator, and nobody will ever see them, and they don't, out of sight, out of mind. But what do we do?
Well, you have to organize. That's going to be number one. Everybody's got to be on the same page. We're not getting what we paid for from the CIF. I would hope that the people, and again, the CIF is not a governmental agency, the last time I checked. So why are they not advocating for our athletes? All they're doing is sitting back in their office or in their recliners or sitting at home, and they're going to send out a notice that says, well, the government has shut down all organized activities, and so our ruling is that of the government. Well, I get that. You have to do that. But why are you not advocating for these high school athletes? Why are you not doing more? Shame on you, CIF. Get off your butt and get out there and help organize and get these kids they're at more of a risk of damaging their mental health than they are of getting this strain of the flu.
Well, and it's physical health. I mean, when we started, so we were 4 or 5 months into the COVID pandemic, and we had, more than 50% of our kids were overweight. I mean, more than 50% of our kids really had sat around and done nothing for the last 4 months. So that the first couple of weeks was a butt kicker for them. And we're going to digress here. We're going to be in a situation or, regress. We're going to go backwards. We're going to have kids that are, having been sat around and, not doing a whole lot for the last, however long we're going to be in this next lockdown, and what's the problem with these lockdowns and the problem with, the future of these lockdowns is will not be the last pandemic in our lifetime. I'm 50 years old. I promise you that we will have another virus. We've had the avian flu. We've had, we've had the swine flu. We've had
SARS.
And it's nearly every 2 or 3 years. Well, and then we've had a pandemic nearly every 20, so you're talking about, so we've set the precedence now that we're going to shut down government. We're going to shut down schools. We're going to shut down everything to hide from this instead of learning to manage it, learning to live with it, learning to deal with, and I'm sorry, and it's terrible that we're losing people, but that's part of living is dying.
We're going to lose more through this because of the things that you just said.
Yeah,
not getting to do these activities,
or not going to the doctors because you're afraid you're going to get COVID, so you don't get to the doctor, so you don't get ahead of cancer. If you have a cancer diagnosis or a whatever diagnosis. I mean, and the reality of it is we got alcoholism and cancer and heart disease killing people, but we don't ban alcohol, we don't ban cigarettes, and I'm not going to go there. But we're not approaching this in a way that's reasonable. We're not approaching this in a way that's manageable, and we're not approaching this in a way that's equitable. And that's where we struggle, especially with our children.
And we're fired up about this. This is not occurring throughout the nation. This is occurring in select states. Certain states, California being one of them. I've got friends that live in other states, and guess what? They're gearing their teams up. They're either in the playoffs or they're gearing up for the playoffs, and they're playing. And they're not having issues that we're told that we're going to run into if we play our sports. Well, we already have a sample size to look at.
Wisconsin.
South Dakota. I mean, they're in playoffs there right now. But here's what we do for all those hundreds of thousands of dollars that are raised through Gates and through athletic competition that we spend on our CIF. Here's what we get from them. This is the activity we get. We get a notice that was released, I believe, either this morning or last night. CIF statement regarding education-based athletic competition. In today's COVID-19 press briefing, Governor Newsom, to me, there's another name for him, but we'll be respectful. Governor Newsom and Dr. Mark Galey from the California Department of Public Health disclosed that the release of updated youth sports guidance has been postponed. Therefore, the current guidance remains in effect. The CIF competitions are not allowed until new guidance is provided. So here's my recommendation, and it's a pretty, we talk about radical ideas and radical decisions, but here's my idea. We've kind of hinted at this in past podcasts, but so we've got the array of sports. So we have, for example, in the fall sports, let's take volleyball, for instance. So you got volleyball. There's national organizations that are still hosting tournaments in other areas that these athletes can go out and play in. Football is the one sport where we're really restricted in terms of athletes getting recruited because there aren't club football out there. Well, guess what? Let's take this and make this the catalyst for creating club football. Let's take athletics out of the high school. Let's not let the CIF dictate how we run our youth sports and do stuff like that. And I know that's a pretty radical idea. And realistically, I think we're already set up to do that with the exception of football.
Yeah.
And you could organize enough people that would be able to put something like that together. Because I just think, look at youth football. We do it with youth football. The CIF isn't running the youth football leagues. We've got each individual conference has their own leadership and they run their leagues. Let's take the youth football model and apply that to the high school level and tell the CIF, good luck making your money now. You've done nothing for us in the past, so why don't you go ahead and lay some of your staff off, like these high schools are having to furlough people and people aren't making their money. Well, I don't see the CIF doing that. So let's.
I got into a huge argument with a guy on Twitter. Not argument, but a Twitter argument.
Twitter battle.
Yeah, over the exact same thing. And he was I think he's a coach down in SoCal, and he was arguing that it'll never work with football because football is too expensive and this and this and this. And I said, yeah, and the initial costs are expensive, but there is fundraising. And it gets done. I guarantee that our schools are not flush with money. I would think that almost every single school district would like to not have the liability or the exposure that they have as far as having high school football or what have you. So if there's a will, there's a way. You have the IMG academies, you have charter schools now, you have private schools. We've had private schools for a long time, and everybody operates by a different set of rules. So if there was, it's going to happen. It's not a matter if it's going to happen or when it's a matter of when it's going to happen, because really it's happening. I know in Fresno there are 2 or 3 high school aged travel teams being put together. LA has a couple of places that are putting them together, and before long you're going to have the IMG Academy that's in Florida. Somebody's going to, because it's competitive imbalance. You have the private schools are the only ones that can compete, and really you have parents that are paying for, and some paying. Some of those kids are recruited, and so we get it, and everybody understands how that works, and that's not, and I don't really actually have a problem with that. To give a kid an opportunity that wouldn't have otherwise had an opportunity because, he's can't afford it is not okay. And if somebody's willing to foot the bill for that, good for them.
Yeah, you
can't have it both ways, and so our thing is, do we think that travel sports are the answer? Possibly. Would we still be under the same restrictions? Yeah, we would. But if you have people that really truly care, you're going to have people that would be in front of this, that put their own issues or their own personal opinions aside and really fought for the betterment of this segment of the population that's being underserved. And that's across the board. You have from the high school, for kids being in school, in learning. Now, we're talking about now schools are saying, oh, we're not going to go back to school. And for what? You're really not going to send your kid? You think your kid being at home is the best place for him right now or her? It's not. It's just, it's sad. It's crazy. It's everything in between. And I'm pissed. I'm emotional about it because it bothers me. I look in 45 to 50 kids' eyes, every single day, and they have hope. When you take that away, I look in their eyes and, You should have, it was deflated, and I'll go a step further. So Monday, we had 46 kids, I think it was, at practice. When the news came out that everything was going to be on lockdown and it was coming on Monday, I don't lie to my kids. I'm transparent. I told them, most coaches probably wouldn't say anything and just not to disrupt anything. I told them what was going on. On Tuesday, we had 38. So we lost 8 kids in a day. Yesterday, we had 28. So we lost nearly half of our kids in 2 days because the hope is gone for them. And so how do we rebuild that hope? And what are we going to do? Like, somebody has to get their shit together enough to want to care about these kids enough to put their ass on the line. That's really where we're at.
Well, and again, I'm beating a horse here because I really do. There is a certain level of disdain that I have for that organization, but the CIF, you get paid to do this. Step up. Do what you're supposed to do, advocate for these kids, or disband and be done. Because you know what? People are getting tired of your crap, of the way that you want to govern our athletes and tell our athletes what they can and cannot do. We're over it. If you're not going to advocate for these kids, get out of the way, disband, and let's move forward and let people organize and develop new avenues for their kids to compete. And we've already, quite honestly, if I was working at CIF, I'd be a little scared right now because the structure is already set. It's already there. The last thing on the horizon in terms of big sports is football. And I got to tell you, I think there's enough knowledgeable people in the state of California when it comes to football that can make this work. With when I see people in social media making millions of dollars for what they do there, I guarantee you there can be money raised for the high school age leagues. And I know one of the questions that you brought up was, well, what about the kids that can't afford to pay to play and do all that? Well, that's where we try to, maybe it's getting sponsorships involved. There's sponsorships at the CIF. Toyota used to sponsor them. There's a long list of sponsorships that the CIF has. So Les Schwab. Yeah. Let's take that money. Because CIF needs to go away and have those sponsorships sponsor leagues that are lower income leagues, or more of a community based league where we can take, you might have an elite league where it's you got single A, double A, triple A, and whatever your top level is, that that's going to be the team that's going to probably be traveling around California. And then when you get to the lower levels, these kids are playing within kind of maybe the same area that, like, for example, we talked about the Motherload League or the TVL or the VOL, and they travel in those confines where it's much more manageable, much more affordable,
and much more reasonable and rational. You put teams into leagues that don't make zero sense. There's no geographical sense. There's no economical sense. There's no demographical sense. It's just like, let's pick and choose what we're going to do with certain teams because it makes sense. It makes us feel good about like we're doing our job. But the other part of this is the reality of it is the cost may be an issue, to do this, but it can be done. I mean, it's Absolutely. Not, the school, again, the schools are not flush with cash. This isn't the guy who I got into it with a little bit on Twitter, talked about this being a $250,000 a year thing for football annually. I'm like, never. Your schools are not paying $250,000 a year for us to play football. And he's like, well, there's no gate. There is a gate. And the thing is when the community, if it becomes more community oriented and it's not so high school driven, you're going to have people that care more because they actually have a say. They're going to have, the people who are, if I'm going to, say I had the ability to put $50,000 sponsorship for a team. I don't, but just say I did. Well, don't you think I would have some type of a say in how things are being done? Mm-hmm. Don't you think I would have some say into what type of uniforms we're wearing, or what type of equipment we use, or how we do the things, structurally? We fundraise, and not everybody fundraises, and not everybody has the community to fundraise. But in our community, we fundraise for athletics out here, and we do a fine job doing it. Our boosters club is second to none.
Oh, top notch.
And they make enough money almost to the point where if we wanted to do something like this, it would just be another couple of events, and so if that were to open up, and there are levels. I mean, the reality of travel sports are today, you can stay home. If you go, when COVID's not around, you can go to Michelin Park in Ripon, and there'll be 50 teams on any given weekend playing each other. And then there's 50 soccer teams playing right next to each other. So if you want to stay local and keep things cost effective, do that. If you have an elite team, an elite travel team, or this area put together an elite travel team that went to Nevada and goes to Florida and goes to Texas or whatever we decide we're going to do, then that's the one that needs to raise the $500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Let me ask you this. So during a normal football season, and let's say, there's a home game, who gets the gate at those games?
During the regular season, the home team gets the gate.
Okay.
And every school is a little bit different. So some schools, because how they're represented. So like, for instance, with ours, the Boosters Club gets some of it because they actually do run the snack bar and they do some of the apparel.
Yeah.
And then the school gets some of the gate, or I think the school gets the gate.
Gets the tickets, basically.
But if you get to playoffs,
who gets the money in the playoffs?
CIF.
Oh boy, yeah, there we go. And when you have what is probably outside of opening night, let's say, or homecoming, what's the most attended games in football?
Playoffs.
Oh, geez, so there's the biggest gate.
Yeah.
And hey, CIF, what are you doing with this money? Less is more. I can't express it enough. If we got rid of it's like the NCAA. The NCAA has almost outlived itself. It's like we need to move on from these organizations, and figure out a new way to do things. Because while there isn't maybe ideally the amount of money we need to make all this happen, I think there is a direction we could go if we could recuperate some of the money that CIF is taking from these high schools.
Well, and you see, the CIF or the NCAA has actually, they've started to get their act together. They're as antiquated as their systems were and the things that they held back. Not allowing transfers. Kids transfer nearly annually now. I just read about an article the other day. A kid is on his 5th school in 5 years at the college level, at the D1 level, and with nothing holding them back from playing, which is fine. Find a place where you're happy. If it takes every year you got to transfer and you get your degree or don't get your degree, whatever your goal is, and you're happy, do it. Why should a regulatory organization, or why should an organization such as the NCAA have any say in that? The second thing is that you have these kids that, now with social media and the like, their likenesses are all over social media. So they're now allowed to be paid for their likenesses and for the ability. They have the ability, if they have the ability to earn on their personal image or on their
personal lives, not as an athlete.
Yeah, not to win a game or to, it's not predicated on, if I bat 500 in a year or I have 15 pins or anything like that. It's more like, I have this social media platform and I have 1.5 million followers that generates X amount of revenue, and you're allowed to keep all of it. Whereas in the past, the NCAA said you cannot. I was in college in 1994. When we went to Division I, you're not even allowed to have a job. That's right. You could not work and have a job at the same time.
And if you did have a job, it had to be in the summer, and they told you how much you could make.
Yeah.
You can't make more than this amount, otherwise you're ineligible.
How crazy is that you have kids that are willing to play, to go to a Division I school, get a college education, do all the things that are required of that, have a job outside of those requirements, so they can either not have college debt after they get into the real world, or so they have money to live, which was my situation. I needed the money to earn so I could actually have things, food and rent and electricity. I mean, crazy. It's just craziness. But, and this is a soapbox for us today. It's more of both of us are pissed.
We're thankful that we have something where we can vent, because, this is wrong. If you feel that we're off base, or if you feel that my comments are a little bit maybe too extreme in terms of the CIF, more power to you. I'd like to hear from you. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. If you've got ideas that you feel are, things that could be employed that other people need to hear about, let us know. We'll discuss them on the podcast. We might even have you on the podcast, but we definitely want to hear from you. We're starting to get, slowly, we've got a very small base right now, and we know that, but I think that as things progress and we're actually able to get into the seasons and actually get to do what we wanted to do in the first place, and that's talk about sports, high school sports, I think things will keep growing. Tell a friend, tell anybody, that we exist. Use us as a platform. Reach out to us, whether it's through the Twitter account, through Facebook, through email. Reach out to us, and we'll tag those here at the end of the show. But reach out to us and let us know your thoughts. Tell us where we're right. Tell us where we're wrong, and let's have a great discussion. At the end of the day, the whole goal is to get the kids back on the football field, to get the kids back in the gymnasium, to get the kids back on the soccer field, the baseball field, the wrestling mat, whatever your chosen sport is. We want to see people get back to doing what they're doing. Let's give these kids a chance to compete. They're the lowest on the risk factor when it comes to this disease, which we all agree it exists, but they're the lowest risk factor, and I think they're just being punished for something that's way outside of their control.
So we started this with all the right intentions, and we're going to continue this with all the right intentions. As when this gets posted and and we start tagging people on Twitter, tag everybody. Let's make this a movement. We need to figure out, and if it starts from the 209, good for us. If we're the ones that lead the charge to help this thing, help our kids get that what they're entitled, and entitled to, or rights to, or privilege, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't. We don't need to get into the semantics, and we don't need to talk about, what rights are, and all of that type of stuff. What we're going to talk about is what's best for our children.
Yeah.
If we can't all agree on that, then this isn't the podcast for you, and we're good, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. But when this gets posted on Twitter, please tag your friends. Please tag the other the people that are not following us. Let's get let's build this.
Yeah, comment. Let us know what you think. The more people we get talking about this, the better. And we need to have a group of people that are willing to express their opinions, willing to come up with ideas that are going to allow us to get our athletes back to doing what they should be doing. And so, thank you for listening to kind of, I guess, our rant today. We would much rather have been talking about statistics, about leagues. In an ideal world, we're talking about results. We're talking about individual athletes, but it looks like we're going to have to, fight a little bit longer before we can get there. So,
yes, sir. And as we wrap this up, we want to thank everybody for listening. It was a little bit long, and we really kind of maybe it's going to upset some people, and for that we're sorry, but not sorry. We're passionate about this. We believe in it. We started it because of this. You can always reach us on Twitter at 209prep. You can reach us on Facebook at 209prepsports, or you can always email us at prepsports209@yahoo.com. Thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully next week next week's Thanksgiving, so we'll probably broadcast on Wednesday just to get something out there and maybe have an update or two, and hopefully somebody in the higher up, somebody who has some authority, will help us get to a point where we can move forward. Hopefully.
Yeah, and what he means by that, I'll express it since I'm in a different place. If you're involved with the CIF and you don't like what I said, which you probably don't, call me out on it. I want to hear from you. Tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to hear that.
Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.